healing itself from any disease or injury. Do you believe that?
The human body is naturally in a state of what is called self-regulation, which in biological terms is called homeostasis. So it's our natural state. Now, having said that, there are 5% of what are called disease-related gene mutations, which are fully penetrant, which means at this moment we do not know how to stop their expression. 5%. In those 5%, there's a one-to-one relationship between the gene mutation. So mutation is an error. It's like a typo in the gene, which is the word that becomes the flesh, so to speak. Those 5%, we at the moment do not understand how self-regulation would work or healing would work. So a good example of that is the gene mutation that Angelina Jolie had for breast cancer. But most gene mutations aren't like that. That includes cancer, that includes autoimmune illnesses, degenerative disorders, and even propensity to inflammation, heart disease, infections. Most of those are influenced by basically how we experience life. And not only how we experience life, but how we interpret our experiences of life.
You say in Super Genes that we're the user of both our brain and our genes.
Yeah,
so can you explain?
Every experience we have, for example, this experience we're having right now of speaking to each other, looking out at this beautiful scenery outside, the ocean, this is a perceptual experience. But you could also be having a mental experience of thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires. Where is this experience happening? Well, the easiest answer is it's happening in consciousness. It's happening in awareness. Where is that consciousness? Now, that's a very difficult question to answer because in science that's called the hard problem of consciousness. Consciousness being formless, it has no form. Everything material has a form. Your brain has a form, your body has a form, your genes have a form, this microphone has a form, everything has a form. But that in which all this experience is happening, which the word for that is consciousness, that has no form. And having no form, it has no location in space or time. Therefore, a few of us believe that consciousness is not in space-time, that it is projecting itself as the body and as the universe. The body has a brain, which is part of the projection. The body is created by genes. When your parents returned from that picnic and you were conceived as a fertilized egg, that had a form. Okay. But the experience is not happening in form. It's happening in a formless, dimensionless consciousness, which is you. So when we realize that, then we see that genes which create the brain and the body, and then of course the brain and body are sculpted afterwards through experience. The genes themselves are the repository of experience of our parents and our ancestors going all the way back to the beginning of life. So all this is an activity in consciousness. And so every thought, every feeling, every emotion, every knowing, every perception, every personal relationship, every social interaction, every environment, every bite of chocolate or whatever else you're putting in your body, the fact have enough sleep or lack of, stress or lack of, all that is constantly modulating the activity of your genes right this moment. So eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, the world of sensory experience, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, and then our inner world of thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, imagination, creativity, insight, intuition, um, knowing, all of that is regulating the activity of your genes and the brain, because the neural networks are made of proteins, which in turn are made from DNA and RNA, sort of, which is the factory. You know, your RNA is the factory where the body is being sculpted and manufactured. So yes, we are not our genes, we are not our brains. We are the user of the brain and the user of our genes, which are ultimately experiences in consciousness. They are symbols. The brain, the body, even the mind are symbols of ways of knowing, feeling, thinking, sensing the world, five senses. It's all very wonderful the way it's happening. The whole universe is participating in the creation of everything that's happening, both inside your body, inside your mind, and in your experience of the world.
You say in Superbrain that life isn't good by itself. You must respond to it as good. So it's kind of how you perceive things. So if our past experiences and conditioning color the lens through which we see the world, how do we change that lens if we're sick or if we're not happy with our reality?
Everybody has a conditioned mind, and that's what makes a person a person. So as soon as you're born, you're given a name, an identity, a culture, a religion, a nationality. It's essentially creating a fictional identity out of a field of infinite possibilities. So, you know, when the baby is born, all it is experiencing is itself as everything it looks and hears and feels. And then, you know, we come along and say, this is your name and that's a tree. And suddenly there's what we call a subject-object split, which is artificial. There's no me and the universe, because me is the activity of the universe. But as a result of our conditioning, which can be a result of our parents, our education, our religion, our culture, our history, our economics, we create a individual identity. Now, some people have a relatively good conditioning. The parents say, oh, you're a gift of the universe, you're the divine incarnation in this body, you will achieve extraordinary things and do wonderful things. And so that kind of programming influences everything from thought to emotions to perception to biology. So if a child is receiving lots of attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance, love, joy, then that'll create a biology that is self-regulating, homeostatic, and healthy. On the other hand, if the child is not given that acceptance, affection, appreciation, that creates a feeling of separation in the baby or fear that ultimately will express itself as maybe anger or hostility or resentment or grievances or guilt or shame or depression, then that creates separation. And so you have, as it's almost a cliche now, you have love on the one hand and fear on the other hand, but it's love is being connected to life and fear is being disconnected. That fear, which is the basis of all the other emotions I mentioned, the dysfunctional ones, that creates a disruption in homeostasis or self-regulation, which then we say dis-ease, because it starts with discomfort, but then it becomes disease. And I think more and more evidence is showing that early conditioning, almost before we learn to speak, because babies respond to body language. They look at eye movements, tone of voice, facial expression, gestures, and they kind of trying to figure it out. Is this person loving or friendly, not with words, but at the level of feeling? And so that starts to program their limbic brain, which is their emotional brain. And that limbic brain is connected to then the endocrine system, hypothalamus, pituitary, and everything else, immune system. So emotional trauma is the beginning of disease and goes back to very early childhood memories. Can we correct that? Yes, we can correct that. First of all, by becoming a witness to our own thoughts and feelings, emotions, perceptions, not trying to be positive, which is exasperating. Positive people are very exasperating because they're so artificial. But by learning how to witness your inner world, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, then asking yourself, why do you hold the beliefs that you do? I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not whatever. All these limiting beliefs, which are thoughts that were programmed into your consciousness before you learn to think for yourself. 99.9% never people don't think for themselves. They're the recycling of other people's thoughts, their culture, their society. It's a kind of hypnosis of social conditioning. And so it programs you into very predictable outcomes of behavior, of thinking, and ultimately of biology. So I'd say 99% or more people are biological robots that were conditioned either for good things or not so good things, or suffering or joy or whatever. So I personally believe that the ideal situation would be not that you're conditioned for good things or bad things, but you're independent of them. So you can kind of go to a deeper part of yourself, which is a field of pure potentiality, infinite possibilities, infinite creativity, love, joy, compassion, peace, equanimity. And from there, you can make the choices that are most appropriate for you and your biological systems in the moment. If you have to plan for that, that's just another form of conditioning and thought and programming and stress and all of that. So it is the right choice at the right moment for the right situation as it occurs, with no resistance, no anticipation, no regrets, just this moment as it is. And you can program it right this moment in the way you want to.
To get to that deeper level of yourself, one of the tools is meditation.
Correct. Now, there are many kinds of meditation. There are meditations that involve self-reflection. So you sit quietly and you ask yourself, who am I? You don't know the answer. But if you keep asking and staying with the question, then you realize that who you are has no name and no form, is just that consciousness. There are other forms of self-reflection. What do I want? Because most people are going about doing things and they actually don't know why they're doing them, whether it's making money or trading on this stock market or buying a beautiful house or a yacht. They actually don't know why they're doing it. They're doing it because other people are doing it. It's kind of a race to conform. How can I conform better than my neighbor? It's, again, being that biological robot. So you have to ask, why do I want what I want? What's the real purpose? Which brings you to the third question. What am I grateful for? And the fourth question, what is my purpose? I don't think you came into this world to buy a yacht or a private plane, and that'll be a legacy. I bought a yacht. You came into this world in order to find out who you are, ultimately. So self-reflection is a very good form of meditation. There are forms of meditation that are called self-questioning, which is questioning your beliefs, because every belief is a thought, and beliefs are cover-ups for insecurity. Whether it's your belief in God or angels, they all cover up. If I asked you, do you believe in electricity, you would say, I don't have to believe in it, making this microphone work. So, do you believe in gravity? If God is real or anything is real, then belief is not required. Experience is required and knowledge is required. So you have to question every belief, including the belief that you are a body or a mind or a personality. You have to question that. So that's another form of meditation. Third form of meditation is what is these days called mindfulness, which is a terrible word because you're not using your mind when you're practicing awareness. The awareness of a thought is not a thought. So, awareness of your body, awareness of the interior of your body. These are yogic technologies to be aware without any labels, judgments, evaluations, analysis, just to be aware. So you can practice body awareness, you can practice awareness of the inside of your body, awareness of your heart, of your liver, of your kidneys. A thing that's in the yogic tradition is called pratyahara, or in English we could say interoception. Perception is when I experience the world. Interoception is where I experience what's happening inside. Then there's awareness of mental space, of thoughts and feelings and emotions and imagination. Not the imagination, but the awareness of what is being imagined. Awareness of knowing. Awareness of relationships, personal relationships, social relationships, a relationship with the environment, relationship with the universe. Then there is what is called transcendence, which is usually using a technique like a mantra. This is what we do here. In addition to all the other things I mentioned, the mantra is kind of a sound that competes with your thoughts and ultimately takes you to a place where there is no thought and no mantra, and you're just left with awareness by itself, or what is called pure awareness. So as we practice these techniques, we get in touch by and by with our core being or core consciousness, which in spiritual traditions is often called the soul. But again, using the word soul sets up expectations in people's mind. They think there's a ghost inside the body. But there's no ghost there. It's just fundamental awareness, without which there would be no experience of the world, of the body, of the mind, or of anything. We need awareness to experience anything. So awareness, consciousness, spirit, soul. Again, spirit, soul are loaded words. God is a loaded word because people have made so many interpretations. So the best thing is to just say your core being, your core consciousness is a dimensionless awareness in which all experience happens, in which all experience is known, and out of which all experience is made. Once you understand that, then you see that's all there is. There's awareness and its activities or modulations or modified forms or fluctuations or excitations that we call mind, body, universe. At that level, you're the creator of everything you experience. And there's no need to worry about healing or disease or all those concepts. They're all concepts because the body itself is a concept.
Once you get to that level, the overall benefit is there, but meditation has physical benefits.
If your body is a projection, then you can upgrade the movie. Upgrade the illusion. But yeah, you can have physiological benefits, by which we mean you have a better experience of the projection of consciousness, which we call mind and body.
Well, let's talk about the microbiome.
So let's go back to the beginning, okay? Your parents fell in love, they had a gleam of desire in their eyes, and the upshot was a fertilized ovum. And this is a single cell. This cell divides about 50 times, approximately, and suddenly you have a baby, which is 100 trillion cells, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And they all came from that one cell, becoming two, becoming four, etc. That process is called morphogenesis and differentiation. Morphogenesis means to give rise to form, and differentiation, how that one cell became all the cells: eyes, nose, fingernails, genitalia, hair follicles, liver, kidneys, spleen, all one cell. So that one cell differentiated. It didn't separate, it differentiated. One became many, but they're all connected to the source. That came from 23,000 genes that you acquired, half from your mother and half from your father. What's a gene? Gene is a stretch of DNA. So people have heard this word DNA. Everybody talks about DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And it's basically four chemicals: adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. And in short, we can say A, T, C, and G. That's the alphabet of life. It doesn't matter if that life form is a banana or a mosquito or a hippopotamus or a crocodile or a human being. Only four letters. In English, we use 26 letters, but life uses four letters. That's DNA, and it's housed in 46 chromosomes, which are part of the fertilized ovum. A gene is a stretch of DNA. A stretch of DNA. Think of your chromosomes like a spiral staircase. That's how people look at pictures of DNA. So there are rungs on the spiral staircase. These are the DNA molecules. But a stretch of that staircase that codes for a unit of heredity. So you have a gene for blonde eyes, for blonde hair. You have a gene for blue eyes. Some people have a gene for the nose that Napoleon had. Things like that. So gene is a stretch of DNA. Your body, though, is not just this or that gene. Your body is a symphony or an orchestra or a story that's created out of these words. Literally, the word becoming the flesh, so to speak. Okay, so that's 23,000 genes that you got from your parents. Now, as you come out, provided you're not coming out through a cesarean section, which happens only on weekdays because on weekends the doctors are playing golf. But if you don't come out into this world through a cesarean section, as you come out into this world, you breathe in and you inhale the vaginal secretions of your mother. So this is called the vertical transmission of the microbiome, because these secretions have about 2,000 different species of bacteria. And if you count the number of genes, it's 2.2 million genes. So your parents gave you 23,000 genes, but on your entry to the world, you acquired 2.2 million genes that were basically the bacteria of Mother Earth. Okay, provided Mother Earth wasn't contaminated with antibiotics and steroids and chemicals and pesticides. But theoretically, Mother Earth gave you 2.2 million genes. This is called the vertical transmission of the microbiome. It's in your skin because you were coated in those secretions. You swallowed them, you inhaled them. So now you've entered the world with 23,000 genes from your parents and 2.2 million genes, and now more genes as a result of interactions with your parents and your siblings and all that cooing and cutting and touching and kissing and licking and breastfeeding. There's an interaction between your genome and this microbiome, and of course the experiences of life. And that creates a third structure, a sheath of proteins called the epigenome, which then regulates the activity of your genes. So what we call super genes in our book was the integrated activity of the genes from our parents, the microbiome, which is our real self, because technically speaking, you're just a few human cells hanging on to a bacterial colony, and then the epigenome that came about as a result of experience. And these three interact with each other. Now, it seems from what we've learned that the five things that create what you might call a holistic integration are sleep, meditation and stress management, movement, but more particularly movement that has some kind of mind-body coordination, like yoga, for example. What we call the yoga asanas. The word asana means seat of awareness. So each of the asanas stimulates different nerves that go to different organs of the body. A sun salutation, for example, stimulates the vagus nerve that goes from the brain to the vocal cords to influencing facial expressions, breathing, heart, and then all the organs in the body. And so that kind of mind-body coordination, vagal stimulation, influences everything: the microbiome, bioregulation, heart rate variability, etc. So the third thing is movement, which influences self-regulation, the integration between the genome, the epigenome, the microbiome. The fourth thing is breathing. Now, most people don't breathe properly because they're not present. If you're present, then your breathing has a certain quality to it. But of course, in the yogic traditions, there are hundreds of breathing techniques, some that people learn in yoga studios when they're told ujjayi breathing or alternate nostril or bellows breath. These all have very profound effects on the visceral nerves that go to different parts of your body. So that's I said, first thing is sleep, second thing is meditation, stress management. The third is yoga, breathing, and movement. The fourth is emotions. So the more your emotions connect you to life, what Eastern wisdom traditions call divine emotions: love, compassion, joy, equanimity. Those cause self-regulation, and the others that I mentioned, guilt, shame, depression, anger, hostility, resentments, grievances, they disrupt that. And the final thing is food. So if your food is contaminated by antibiotics or steroids or hormones or pesticides, which are petroleum products, same thing they used in the killing fields of Vietnam, Agent Orange. If your food is manufactured, refined, processed with all this junk, then that'll kill the microbiome, and the microbiome then sends messages through metabolites to your genome, says, hey, there's a war going on. And so your gene reacts as if there's a war going on, and the product of that is inflammation. And inflammation then messes up the epigenome, causing more inflammation. It's like, killing a few terrorists, but causing a lot of collateral damage. So the terrorists tell the healthy guys, these people are killing us, join me. So, the terrorism magnifies, and that's disease. So, on a very simple level, sleep, meditation, movement, breathing, etc., emotions, and food. It's not that difficult to do all these things, but the science is very exciting.
If we're in pain, if we're feeling physical pain and suffering with the disease, or in fear, locked in fear, how do we put our attention elsewhere?
When there is physical pain, due to inflammation or injury or disease, that physical pain requires you to bring your awareness to the pain. If you resist it, it only gets worse. So you bring awareness to it. There's a poem of Rumi, says, the cure of pain is in the pain. So you actually bring as much awareness to it without judging it, without saying, oh, this is painful, this is hurting. Then that's not awareness, that's a thought. But awareness being consciousness, and consciousness being self-regulation, the best thing is in physical pain to bring your awareness to it without anything, even without intention, just attention. Now, that's one thing you should do when you have physical pain. The other thing you can do is meditate to the point of transcendence, which is to the point where there's, in the way we teach it anyway, there's no mantra and no thought. There's only awareness, transcendence. There's no pain when you transcend, because pain is in the world of space-time and causality. And transcendence, you get beyond that. So that's what you do with physical pain. And of course, you treat the underlying illness. But there's another kind of pain that human beings have called suffering, which doesn't, I think, occur in other animals that I know of. You know, why didn't my girlfriend return my call? Or some ridiculous thing like that. Some thought. Human suffering is different than the suffering of animals or other sentient beings. You know, we like to question everything from why do we have to get old. You know, a lot of people worry about getting old and then they get old faster, notwithstanding all the stuff they put in their body to correct it. The fear of infirmity, the fear of rejection, the fear, the big one, death. Okay, so human beings have what is called existential suffering, which is beyond the physical pain. It can cause physical pain too, but the underlying thing is a suffering that comes from not knowing reality. So again, in the Eastern wisdom tradition, say that's not knowing who you are. It's holding on to that which cannot be held on. No experience can be held on to. Why? Because experience by definition has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. This experience we're having will be over. Okay? Hawaii, beautiful, will be over in a week. The experience you had as a teenager is gone. You can't hold on to it. In fact, you cannot hold on to anything, technically speaking. But people try to, and so then they suffer because they're holding on to an activity. They're holding on to a verb instead of, they think it's a noun, but it's a verb. An activity can't be held on to. It's like trying to hold on to the breeze or trying to hold on to your breath. You'll suffocate. So that's the second cause. The first is not knowing who you are. The second is grasping and clutching and holding on to that which doesn't exist. It's not permanent. The third is the fear of impermanence that comes from that. The fourth is identifying yourself with a socially induced fictional identity called the ego. And the fifth is the fear of death. These are the basic causes of human suffering. And the only cure for that is finding your core identity, which is not in space and time, which, again, for lack of a better word, we'll call it your soul. So if you lose your soul, you gain the whole world, you will suffer. But if you reconnect with your core being, then you can have the experience, enjoy the experience, and at the same time not be bound by it. Now, being bound by the experience, again, in Eastern wisdom traditions, called being bound by karma. And being bound by karma is suffering. But being independent of karma is creativity. So the opposite of karma is creativity. And that is ultimate healing. So, you know, there's physical healing, there's psychological, emotional healing, but ultimately, healing is the return of the memory of wholeness or who you really are. Health, healing, wholeness, holy, they're all the same word.
I love when you talk about how, you know, we have new cells daily, new organs, body parts every weeks, months. So is it our minds that keep the disease in place?
Okay, good. So if we remember that our body is an activity, in fact, there's only activity in the universe. Nothing stands still, except maybe in a museum. But even museums go away after a while, you know. There were great museums that don't exist anymore. But unless you're a mummified body, as long as you're part of a living universe, then everything is activity. Like a river, it looks the same, but it's not the same. You know, Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, said, no man can step into the same river twice because it's a new man and it's a new river. Like that, you cannot step into the same body twice, the real you, because in every moment because you're eating, breathing, digesting, metabolizing, experience the world, breathing, inhaling, exhaling, thinking. Your body is an activity, constantly going on. So you would never have the same body that you had a little while ago. The last time I came to Hawaii, I brought the same suitcase, but not the same body. That was a different body. Recycled. My suitcase has a longer shelf life. So at that, depending on which level you want to look at, your body is going on and off, which means it's being born, it's dying. Depending on what scale you want to look at it. At the scale of subatomic particles, it's bouncing on and off at the speed of light. So I look here, that's a different you. Okay. At the level of molecules and atoms, it's longer. So your stomach cells recycle every 5 days. You have new stomach cells every 5 days. You have a new skin once a month. The old one's dead, unless you have crocodile skin, in which case it takes longer to recycle. But it's the rate of recycling that's different in different parts of the body. Your skeleton is new every 3 months. Even DNA, which holds memories of millions of years of evolutionary time, the actual raw material of the DNA, which is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, which came from a star, some galaxy. That stuff recycles every 6 weeks. In about 1 year, you've recycled 98% of your body. So you say, well, why does this look the same as last year's model? Well, first of all, it doesn't. If you look carefully, this one is a little older than last year's model, unless you're practicing transcendence, when this could even look younger than last year's model. What recycles, in fact, is memory, karma, or we might say conditioning, because that's what karma is. It's the conditioned mind. So it recycles. The stomach cells are new every 5 days, but they remember how to make hydrochloric acid. Okay, DNA, the cells are recycled every 6 weeks, but they remember all of the history of life. Even your skeleton recycles every 3 months. So what is recycling is memory. Where is memory? In consciousness. And a lot of that memory is conditioned memory. At 45 you should have menopause, and then 65 you should go to Florida and then end up in a nursing home with a catheter or something like that. It's all conditioned mind that is recycling. Now, a lot of people, when they hear me talk like this, they think it's flaky, but it's actually true. If you want to change your body, even the physical appearance of your body, then you have to transcend to that level which is beyond memory, because memory can't be erased. If memory is in consciousness, and consciousness is formless, dimensionless, then memory can't be erased. But what you can do is you can go to a level which is beyond memory, and then you can introduce new memories. Okay, being in Hawaii, having a great time, falling in love, all those memories, or listening to music or poetry or dancing, etc. Anything that creates a memory that is more in the foreground, and the traumatic memories are less in the foreground. They're there, but they're overshadowed by the joyful memories. Then you have a chance of reinventing your body. You reinvent your body by resurrecting your soul. There's no other way.
If a loved one came to you and said, oh, my doctor just told me I have a terminal illness, I have stage 4 cancer or whatever, how would you guide them through that?
I tell my patients, believe the diagnosis if it's been validated, because somebody says you have cancer or this or that, you should listen and maybe get a second or third opinion. And if that's validated, then you have it. Okay, so believe the diagnosis. Now you can do something about it. But don't believe the prognosis. Prognosis is when somebody says, you have 3 months to live, or 60% of people die in 6 months. It's like telling what the temperature is now, knowing the average temperature for the year. If you're from New York City and the average temperature is 75 degrees, it doesn't tell me what the temperature is right now. Or if you're from Honolulu and your income is $100,000, but the average income is $60,000, there's no correlation. So your prognosis, nobody can predict, number one. So why not choose the best prognosis you have? And secondly, recognize the fact that I mentioned earlier that only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are penetrant with our current state of knowledge, which means in 95% of the cases, you have something to do that could change the outcome of your disease. You are a participant. So I would say, first of all, get to know more about what you have than your doctor. Go Google search. Look up the National Library of Medicine. Do a PubMed search. And take in everything that's there. Some of it reliable, some of it not. But you will intuitively know what makes sense for you. And then explore everything in mind-body medicine, in spiritual healing, in the world of herbs and diet and food and medicine, environment, all the things that create experience of life. At the same time, for acute stages of the illness, use what we call mechanistic medicine. So, if you have an infection and you have lots of bacteria, harmful ones, you have pneumonia, that antibiotic could get you over the hump. Okay, but it won't influence your propensity to infection or your likelihood of getting it again or not getting it again. So medicine is useful. Pharmaceutical medicine, therapeutic interventions, surgery, etc. are useful. I would say in 5% of, or maybe 10% acute illnesses. Otherwise, if you have a chronic illness, doesn't matter what it is, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune illnesses, use a holistic approach, which means everything from mind, body, emotions, relationships, sensory experiences, sound, touch, sight. All these senses are windows to our inner pharmacy. Aromatherapy, music therapy, sound therapy, energy healing, even distant healing, things, because that has a basis in consciousness, therapeutic touch, Reiki, hypnosis, meditation, the whole gamut of anything that influences your experience of mind, body, emotions, including relationships, getting good sleep. So don't believe in the prognosis. We all see spontaneous remissions. We've seen them in heart disease, but now we're beginning to see them in other illnesses. And ultimately go beyond your fear of death, because death happens to an experience, not to you. But the average income is $60,000. There's no correlation. So your prognosis, nobody can predict, number one. So why not choose the best prognosis you have? And secondly, recognize the fact that I mentioned earlier that only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are penetrant with our current state of knowledge, which means in 95% of the cases, you have something to do that could change the outcome of your disease. You are a participant. So I would say, first of all, get to know more about what you have than your doctor. Go Google search. Look up the National Library of Medicine. Do a PubMed search. And take in everything that's there. Some of it reliable, some of it not. But you will intuitively know what makes sense for you. And then explore everything in mind-body medicine, in spiritual healing, world of herbs and diet and food and medicine, environment, all the things that create experience of life. At the same time, for acute stages of the illness, use what we call mechanistic medicine. So, if you have an infection and you have lots of bacteria, harmful ones, you have pneumonia, that antibiotic could get you over the hump. Okay, but it won't influence your propensity to infection or your likelihood of getting it again or not getting it again. So medicine is useful. Pharmaceutical medicine, therapeutic interventions, surgery, etc. are useful. I would say in 5% of, or maybe 10% acute illnesses. Otherwise, if you have a chronic illness, doesn't matter what it is, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune illnesses, use a holistic approach, which means everything from mind, body, emotions, relationships, sensory experiences, sound, touch, sight. All these senses are windows to our inner pharmacy. Aromatherapy, music therapy, sound therapy, energy healing, even distant healing things, because that has a basis in consciousness, therapeutic touch, Reiki, hypnosis, meditation, the whole gamut of anything that influences your experience of mind, body, emotions, including relationships, getting good sleep. So don't believe in the prognosis. We all see spontaneous remissions. We've seen them in heart disease, but now we're beginning to see them in other illnesses. And ultimately go beyond your fear of death, because death happens to an experience, not to you.